All right. It is 1844. It is time for us to manifest our destiny, which, as it turns out, is the right of us to spread and possess the whole continent, which Providence has given to us for the development of the great experiment of liberty and the development of self government entrusted to us. Okay? It is, according to John O'Sullivan, such a right, such as that of the tree to the space of the air and the earth, suitable for full expansion of its principle and destiny of growth. What a guy, this John O'Sullivan. He's given us our destiny. It's our right to manifest ourselves across this great United States continent. And if there are other people there already, and maybe people that we've already forced west for other reasons, well, we're not going to worry about them, because they're not us. And it's not their right to manifest their destiny, but it is our right to do ours. And so in 1845, this concept of manifest destiny really takes off. And it is spurred on by the idea that the West is this mythical land. It's full of excitement, obviously. It's full of romance and resources, which is what we need overall, right? We need our resources. And so it is, according to John O'Sullivan and his friends here, the God-given right of the Anglo-American people to expand their empire. Again, even if there's other people there already, that's not a problem for us. That's not our worry. We are expanding our empire, and we don't care who's there. So once we acquire Florida under the Adams-Onis Treaty, which we talked about back in Unit 3, and we've removed all of those tribes that were living in the Florida region, the Cherokee, the Creek, the Choctaw, we've pushed them out west. Then we realize maybe we want to go west as well. So we're going to go to where we just pushed all those people, and there will be problems, to put it nicely. And problems start, as all problems do, small. So people want to move west. Things are crowded in the cities. They're kind of dirty. There's a lot of immigrants coming in. And so this romantic idea that the West is where it's at helps shape this idea that the American dream is possible. All you need to do is work hard, and you will get to be part of America. You will be successful as an American. And while the actual concept of the American dream doesn't really become mainstream until the Gilded Age, you can see the string of it, the little threads of it throughout pioneer times, because a lot of pioneers went west to own their own land and to make a living and to make a name for themselves where they weren't able to do that in the cities and towns that they lived in. So it's not quite the American dream of coming from somewhere else and starting from nothing and working your way up, but it is the beginning of the concept of the American dream. And if you have talked about westward trails ever in your life, you've probably heard about the Oregon Trail, but there's actually multiple trails. There's the Oregon Trail, of course, there's the Santa Fe Trail, and there's the California Trail. And these three trails, among many others, go west. And perhaps you've heard of the Donner Party, who travels the trail and gets stuck in the Sierra Nevadas pass and ends up resorting to cannibalism to survive. But there are thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people that are traveling over these trails. So we know that the Oregon Trail is the most famous, right? It's got the video games, and it's talked about. It is 2,000 miles plus of trail. But a lot of this trail is not passable by foot at the beginning of the 19th century. It's not even really a trail. But by 1840, this is a wagon train trail. It is easily able to be traversed. There are wagon trains. That's a familiar sight. You don't have to worry so much about being out on the trail alone or blazing your own path because the trail is there now. And so during this westward expansion, this manifest destiny, we get a lot of people going west. Between 1845 to 1870, over 400,000 settlers travel the path west from Missouri to the West Coast. And yes, occasionally a Native American might help guide a group along, but it wasn't done out of kindliness or good-spiritedness usually. There's usually more to it than just a helpful native pushing things along. You may wonder why we stop our westward expansion around 1870, and well, eventually the West is closed, right? Eventually the West has to be settled. So from 1845 to 1870, the West is still open, but a lot of that Western land is brand new to us in 1845, and it only takes us 30 years to settle once we take that land from the people we take it from. Because it is important to note that California and all of that space does not fall into the U.S. boundaries until we take it from Mexico and Spain. And so one of the biggest reasons that people go west is that Congress passes a Homestead Act in 1862, which, yes, is in the middle of the Civil War, but sometimes these things just have to happen. The Homestead Act allows any head of household or an individual over the age of 21, including unmarried women, can't be married, you have to be unmarried, to receive a parcel of land of 160 acres. And all you have to do is pay a filing fee. Once you pay this filing fee, you get a deed for this land. And if you can farm the land and improve the land within the next 5 years, which clearing trees, making it livable, essentially, once that 5 years is up, you get the deed to that land and it belongs to you. So you see, we go back to this idea of the American dream. You can own your own land. You can have something that people didn't have in other places. And maybe they didn't even have it in the cities. But now the U.S. government is offering you the opportunity to have this land that you can say is your own. And so under the Homestead Act of 1862, because there is another one, over 270 million acres of public land is given away to private ownership. And so when we get into the Gilded Age, you're going to notice that Teddy Roosevelt and John Muir, they want to preserve the natural resources of the United States, especially of the West. And that makes more sense with you look at the Homestead Act, because they're giving away all of this acreage without understanding what they're giving away and giving it to people that don't really know what to do with it or how to utilize it properly, which will cause lots and lots of problems when we get to the 1930s. They also pass a second act during this time about the Pacific Railway because we want to make a connected transcontinental railroad. And so the United States government commissions the Union Pacific Railroad to build a railroad track west from Omaha, Nebraska, heading towards the West Coast, while the Central Pacific Railroad builds track easterly from Sacramento, California. And eventually the goal is that they will meet up in Omaha, Nebraska. And under this law, for both of these railroad companies, if they agree to this, not only do they get the railroad, but they also get ownership of all public land within 200 feet on either side of the laid track, plus land grants and payment through bonds that are going to be prorated depending on how difficult the terrain was to build through when the railroad is being built. And so these railroad companies are making huge profit off of building this transcontinental railroad and drilling through the Sierra Nevada mountains. And they do complete the first transcontinental railroad in 1869. But it is super important to note that the people who did the work were mostly Chinese immigrants that the United States will then turn against and exclude for them from existing in this country at all. And we will revisit the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1880 when we get to Unit 6. But it's very important to note that these railroad companies benefited and profited off Chinese labor and then refused to acknowledge that the Chinese were the people who made this happen.